Hello everyone, this is Ashley Burns from the Happy Dumpling Project, and this is the Happy Dumpling Podcast. I'm very happy to introduce the first episode of this podcast in which I explore what makes dumplings such a unique cultural and connective experience. Most everyone can relate to some version of a dumpling, from the half-moon-shaped potato pierogi of Poland, or the classic favorite of my southern relatives in America, chicken and dumplings. To each of us, a dumpling tastes like home. This warmth brings us together, and within my research, I have learned about people who throughout their career have used this passion for culture and food to help forge relationships between vastly different groups of people. This week, I had the honor of interviewing Hugh Amano, who is the chef and co-author of Let's Make Dumplings, a graphic novel meets dumpling cookbook. Amano has written many other books including The Adventures of Fat Rice and Let's Make Ramen, and is currently working on another issue of his magazine Vivant. Amano is a graduate of the University of Colorado and the New England Culinary Institute. Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
Absolutely, thank you.
As you already know, I've been using your cookbook as part of my research, learning about cultural dumplings. And after sifting through so many recipes and cookbooks and just so many different types of dumplings, I've found that Let's Make Dumplings has honestly been some of the most straightforward guidance I've followed for folding and making dumpling dough. I used your recipe for balsa dough the other day, and it turned out really, really well. So
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great.
And I wanted to know a little bit more about you and your career and how those experiences of you traveling and experience different people and food and making dumplings has impacted your perspective of how you connect to the world.
Sure. It's funny because, when people find out you're a chef, the first thing, they want to know where you cook at, like, what's your restaurant? What do you do? What's the food? And for me, it's just always been not really about a certain kind of food, but about the aspect of food that allows you to engage with the outside world. And maybe it's a world you're familiar with, but also maybe it's a world that you're not that familiar with, and it's a nice key to get you into those doors. I've always thought that food is such a great way. Food kind of serves as a cultural bridge, and it's an easy way to for two people to connect. If you're traveling, like, what's the one thing that you're going to do in another country? Guaranteed you have to eat. So you can either look for the nearest McDonald's or whatever and do it that way. But hopefully you're kind of maybe digging a little deeper and going into some restaurants that are a bit truer to the cuisine of the place that you're visiting. And so for me, that's the thing, is being able to reach in through food to kind of understand other cultures.
So, as I said, you've traveled abroad. Where did you go that was most memorable? And you were talking about this connection between food and people and culture. Where was your most memorable, maybe specifically dumpling? Where did you go and how was that experience? And just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting, that question, because my father is Japanese and we spent a lot of time in Japan growing up. The food that I had there, however, it wasn't like visiting Japan. It was like going to another home. So the food that we ate was very traditional, very in the home. To me, gyoza was the absolute number one thing that I take from that. And my mom, who's American, she was really good at gyoza, made wonderful gyoza that she learned from my grandmother, my dad's mom. And to me, I mean, that's one of my favorite foods of all time. And I always say I could eat a million. I've like unlimited stomach space for gyoza. And so that was always really big to me. And a dumpling is just it's so easy to eat. It's so shareable. It's so kind of, you can be on the go with it. And so that was a really big deal to me. And other experiences, when we were researching The Adventures of Fat Rice, so we were in Macau, right across the river from Hong Kong. And then we went down into Singapore and up into Malaysia. And wow, the food there was awesome. Yeah, beautiful, wonderful food. One night in particular, pretty late night, getting dim sum in Macau, which was, just a lot of really kind of new food even to me. Like at that point, I'd been a chef for a long time, but I've had dim sum in Chinese restaurants wherever I've lived, but to experience that like so close to China, was really neat, and I really learned a lot. And again, there were a lot of us. There was a lot of, it's dim sum, so it's small, it's shareable, and that was great. Then one more story was in Croatia, traveling through Croatia and getting into a town called Pula really late at night. And I think it was Sunday. It was just dead. Nobody was out. It was dark. Didn't really know where the hotel was. Just kind of walking through the streets of Pula, super hungry, been traveling all day. And down at the end of the street, you see this little light in this little window, and you smell smoke coming out of there, and it's the good kind of smoke. It's the and Chavapi is like a Balkan meatball of sorts, or meat skewer of sorts, and this woman was grilling those in there and just slapping them onto a bun, spreading it with this delicious red pepper sauce. Yeah, and that was like, it was so nourishing, not just for a hungry traveler in the food sense, but just in the like, wow, this is a little taste of the culture of the area. Super special.
I've definitely had that kind of experience before as well with the eating something that's so different because it's so specific to that area of the world. I studied abroad in Kazakhstan last year, and
Wow.
just being there and being able to eat the food there, specifically dumplings like manti, there's such a distinct flavor to it that you find nowhere else in the world unless you bring it home and you start making it. And like you were
Yeah.
saying earlier with the dumplings and the bringing people together and the process of like folding them and eating them together, and it's just a crowd food, like a family food. It's an incredible experience of, being with people and eating food. So your cookbook I found is incredibly engaging and fun, and it uses the graphic novel, and it's super creative, and you have the recipes and the tidbits of like cultural and historical facts. I want to know what your experience collaborating with the artist Sarah Becken was, and how you guys kind of came together and created this like really unique creative way of presenting culture and dumpling recipes to us.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. She and I met when I was, so we founded Fat Rice in 2013, I believe. And it was in a neighborhood, and we were we didn't know what to do for, we needed like signage, and we needed like images and things like that, and we weren't really sure which way we wanted to go. We didn't want to just put a big sign above the door that said Fat Rice, like being too cool for school kind of. But anyway, we wanted it to be unique. And one night, really early on, we got an email from somebody, from Sarah, and did not know her. She had been in the restaurant earlier that night, ate a dish. I believe it was the Portuguese chicken. And Portuguese chicken, and that kind of the food, the cooking that we were doing, it's very layered. It's very heavy, and there's just a lot of components. And so the Portuguese chicken is this dish in a clay pot, and there's all these layers of what's going on. And Sarah came in, sat at the bar, unbeknownst to us, ate the chicken, went home, drew her interpretation of the chicken, drew the picture of it, sent, and just emailed it to us. This is what we need to do. This is kind of the route that we need to take. So we brought her in. She did a lot of artwork for us for the restaurant. So we would put these big posters in the window, of all the different dishes. And in the book, Adventures of Fat Rice, we used a lot of those dishes, those images, to introduce the dishes. And then she did a lot of other illustrating for us. And so that's kind of where we met. So she came in to collaborate as an artist on the Fat Rice book. In there, there's things in that cooking that are just really hard to describe with words. And we're like, we need different we need to take a different approach. And so one thing that we developed was we called it the thing. And so if you're
The thing
familiar,
thing.
you're very young, so maybe you don't remember. I'm kind of the Addams Family, but the thing is
Oh,
a
the
character.
thing. Yeah.
Hand, yeah. And so we're calling it the thing because you need like to see people's hands doing stuff
Right.
for
Yeah.
someone who's, and ultimately that DNA made it through to the dumplings book. And that when we were writing the dumpling book, it was like everything has to be illustrated because to show how to manipulate the dough into all these different shapes, because it's extremely difficult to
It
write
is. I have
words
definitely
on
experienced that
how.
firsthand.
Yeah, yeah, and it's and there are great dumpling books out there, and Andrea Wynn, who wrote, I think it's called Asian Dumplings. I mean, she's the master, and even in her books, and she endorsed our book and gave us some nice words for back cover. She was even saying like it's so great because you can see all the things that I was trying to say, and I guess that's the point. So back, during the fat rice era is when I met Sarah, and then we collaborated on Let's Make Ramen, which then after that we made the little brother to that book, Let's Make Dumplings. So that's how we met. That's how that whole style got developed for us.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love the illustration. She's an incredible artist. And like I said, the
Yes.
recipes and being able to actually physically see what you're doing is so helpful because you can read all day about something and just seeing it helps a lot. Do you have any advice for young people who might be interested in pursuing a culinary career of some kind, becoming a chef maybe?
Yeah, I would say that probably this person this interest in the culinary field is born of a love of cooking and of food. And I would say necessarily don't just think chef is the only place to go with that. I think that in culinary school, everything I learned is just like you're going to be a chef. That's what you do. But there's so much else out there, and also it's not like don't worry about being top chef of like the best restaurant in the world, because that's kind of not what it's about. Like it's about finding a way to do what you want to do every single day. I'm very lucky. My day job is I'm a private chef for a company here in Chicago. I cook Monday through Friday. I cook lunch Monday through Friday for about 100 people. It's just me. I change the menu every day. So I get to be creative. I get to keep my skills sharp. And I still get that adrenaline rush that every chef will tell you about that happens every Friday night at 7 p.m., when just like everything's happening at once. And point of that is that these are all things that I love and that's what I want to do. And I think sometimes it could be that you want to do research. Like another aspect of what I do, I really love doing the research into these books. I am not a I didn't come into this as a ramen expert or a dumpling expert. And this kind of thing, it's like the project that you're doing, it helps you learn about it and it helps you become more well-rounded as a person. And so that is a long way of saying my advice is to keep in check what it is that you really want to be doing, and not just automatically think loving food means you're going to be a chef. There's just a lot else that can happen with that. But I'll also say too, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a
I'm
lot
sure.
of requires a lot of passion, a lot of time, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. The industry is getting better, but it's still a very challenging industry, and to just stick with it.
I wanted to talk about quickly. Your original degree was in English literature. I feel like you kind of touched on this earlier when you were talking about becoming a chef, but what made you decide to want to become a chef or go into this field?
That's a great question because I grew up, I always loved cooking when I was very young. I loved watching bread rise. That was super interesting. It's like magical, right? And as I got older, I was always, in high school, I was the friend who enjoyed cooking. And in college, I worked in a couple restaurants and bakeries. And then I never thought that I would do food as a career. And then finally, after, graduating from college and I worked in technical writing actually for a while, and just was not for me. And then I realized I think I'm going to go back to school, and I went to culinary school, and it was a great decision. And that's how that all happened. It was just finally a switch flipped. And I was old for the culinary world. I think I was like 25 when I decided to do this, and then that's how I went. That was my
That's so
path.
awesome. It's so cool to meet someone who's so passionate about what they're doing and just so happy with what they're doing, because I feel like a lot of people don't get that and they don't find that in their lives, and I think that's fantastic that you have.
Thank you. I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky for that. I really I'm grateful for that all the time.
Finally, are there any future projects that you're working on that you want to talk about?
Sure. So I'm working on a couple other projects. Sarah and I we're kind of taking a pause on these books. So I'm working on some other projects with some other people, but my main thing that I'm working on now is a magazine. So Bon Vivant is a magazine that I'm doing twice per year on a single subject. So we're doing wood fire cooking, Baja, Mexico, pasta. And so
Oh, very
it's
cool.
a new subject, 100 pages and stories and recipes. And that's kind of my new passion project that I'm doing. It's going great. And I just started work on the next issue, which will be smoked meats. So going down to Austin, Texas to eat a bunch of brisket. Fun. It's fun. I'm very
Yeah.
lucky.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I hope those watching are inspired to reach out of their comfort zone and interact with the culture through something maybe just as simple as reading your book or watching this video. But it was fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much, Mr. Amano.
Absolutely. Thank you.